Blah, 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 blah. Hey, I'm Michelle Loves Books. Welcome back to my channel. So I have just finished Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. This has a horrible glare with my ring light. I think that you would have to be sleeping under a rock for the last 10 years if you don't know what this is all about. However, I'm gonna sum it up for you anyways. Briefly, Midnight Sun is basically Twilight, but from Edward's perspective. It's the exact same storyline, but just from Edward's perspective. Now, Edward Cullen is a vampire that has skin like marble that sparkles in the sunlight, but like marble, not like glitter, guys. He falls in love with a human named Bella. Edward can read minds of everyone that is around him, except for Bella's, which is the first thing that caught his attention. And the second is the irresistible scent of her blood. He becomes obsessed with her and everything starts to unravel. But then he only starts to feel protective of her. And then jealous when other boys in her class start to show interest and want to ask her out. She isn't like other girls. She doesn't react the way that he assumes that she would react. And hey, he's been mind-walking humans for about 150 years. They're pretty predictable. So yes, he's a little bit of an authority on the topic. So it drives him even more crazy that he cannot see inside of her head and see what makes her react the way that she does. Edward has some pretty tough decisions and the stakes are really high. Alice, his sister, is a seer and she only sees it two ways. Either Bella dies or Bella becomes a vampire. Edward cannot live with either outcome. He struggles to try to create an unforeseen future for Bella, where Bella can have the human life that she is meant to have, even if that means an eternity of pain for himself. Midnight Sun was originally, I thought, never actually meant to be published. I could be wrong about that, but I remember back when it came out, when it was leaked, that was the impression that I was under. I was under the impression that it was just a character study of Edward for the author's purpose of developing the Twilight Saga. But someone in her office leaked it. The leaked copy was easily accessible online. She even put it on her website. I believe there was a download link on her website, but it was a partial draft and I have actually read it a couple times, of course. So some of the things were not exactly new to me. I really wasn't sure what to expect going into this book. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a really small, like, short story, novella style. I wasn't sure how much she was going to expand on that partial draft that I had read. But this book exceeded my expectations. I really, really loved it. I think, however, that if you don't read it, you're not going to miss anything from the series. This book is absolutely for fans of the series. So if you want to hate read this, I don't recommend reading it. I mean, read it if you want, hate read it if you want. I don't really care. This is definitely for diehard fans of the series. I think that even if you were just mildly interested in the series, you probably won't have as much enjoyment with this. It might be a little bit long and bogged down and repetitive for you. I think it also goes without saying that you should be Team Edward. However, Jacob does have a couple cameos. Nothing to swoon over, guys, so don't get that excited. This book is 658 pages, which is a lot more than the original Twilight book. The original Twilight had 498 pages. Also, this is a tall edition, and I think the typeface, I thought the typeface was a lot smaller. It's the same. Anyways. Basically what I'm saying, it's a long book. So they've obviously fluffed up the original story and added a lot more to it. There's a lot more backstory added. And obviously Edward doesn't sleep, so there's a lot of scenes where Bella is sleeping and Edward is still running around doing things. Well, when he's not watching her sleep, there are some times where he is with his family. There are conversations that you get to be privy to. There's also a lot more filler that they didn't add in the Twilight series. The whole ordeal after the baseball game, when Bella leaves with Alice and Jasper to go to the hotel, and that whole scene, when I first read Twilight, I thought that that was a little bit boring because she was just in a hotel room for like so many pages just hanging out. Midnight Sun actually talks about what the others were doing that whole time, how they're trying to hunt the tracker, you know, all the background stuff that happened that Bella was in the hospital for, everything that they were doing while Bella was in the hospital. So there's a lot of that, which I thought was really cool and added a lot more action to this book. There's a lot more mind reading. I'm a nosy bitch and I like characters who can read minds. I really don't think that there's enough characters who can read minds. I think Edward's like the only one I can literally think of. Except for, I think there was the main character in Evermore, she can like read minds. So there's a lot more mind reading going on. In Twilight, we get a little bit of some of the thoughts that people were thinking, but Edward was always very modest in what he shared with Bella, and he would edit. So we get the unedited version. And there's probably like one instance where I was like, he decided to like tune out of what some of the others were saying, but we did get a little bit more of it, which I thought was really cool. One of the coolest things, we also really get to see how Edward and Alice's special gifts work together in a really fun and unexpected way. It's really hard to describe, and I don't want to spoil it for you. Like, you need to go experience it, because the way like that they just bounce off of each other and it works in this perfect synchronicity is so cool. And also Jasper has a new surprise. It's very unexpected and very cool. If you are a diehard fan like me and just want more of the Twilight world and more of Edward and more of Bella, this book has a lot of new and fun things to offer for us. I found myself just lately when I've been reading, I really try to go at a fairly brisk pace to put some pages behind me, because I'm always thinking of the next book that I'm gonna read. But this book, I really just savored every word. I don't know what it was. I think I've been feeling like I'm way overdue for a Twilight reread anyways. And I was thinking that after this book, I might go ahead and do a reread, but I think I'm gonna give it a little bit more time, but that's beside the point. I loved it. However, I do have to say the weakest elements for me was when Edward kept describing his inner struggles, the decisions that he has to make, the consequences of those decisions. And I understand like it's this crazy and complicated and layered, whole scenario. I mean, he's just fucked either way. It was a bit too repetitive. I have mentioned before, things that really bug me about characters is when they're very like repetitive. Like, for example, if they do something and then they have to rehash it in their inner monologue and analyze what they did, for the reader, it's like, I find that repetition extremely irritating, and sometimes it can get to the point where it's distracting. Well, in this book, it's like 10 times worse. Yeah. And it's not like we're just repeating one thing. It's this whole string of things. His desire for her blood. If he leaves her, but he can't leave her, but he should leave her. But if he doesn't leave her, she's like gonna get herself into trouble all on her own. Like, the whole string of issues is very repetitive. I believe that it's for the purpose of making sure that we are not underestimating the struggle and turmoil and balancing all of these things constantly. And also because in his string of thought, from his perspective, he will like smell her scent and then think about all of these things. And then later on, like maybe he's watching her sleep and thinking about all of these things. So it's constant within his train of thought. So I can kind of forgive it, even if I find it a little bit too much. I would say there was one chapter where they were actually having a conversation. His inner monologue broke up the conversation in a very distracting way. That was probably like the worst. That's where it got really bad, because it really kind of broke up the flow of the story. I also think that the insta-love was much more prevalent from Edward's perspective. But again, I know everyone hates the insta-love, and that's a lot of cause for most people's criticism of the whole series. But, okay, and this is my own personal justification, but if you know a lot about Stephanie Meyer's vampires, Stephanie Meyer's vampires are basically stopped in time. Their emotions, their personality, everything is just like cast in stone. So they described, not in this book and not even in Twilight, I believe, I can't remember which book, they really kind of go into a little bit more depth on. They describe this and they talk about how for something to change a vampire's way of thinking, their emotions, the way they react, like to change their life, it has to be something super significant, like losing a loved one or finding a new love, something just so incredibly powerful. Like, humans are changing all the time, and constantly reacting to things than little things that will change us throughout time. But Stephanie Meyer's vampires are not that immovable emotionally and personality wise. So it has to be something huge and sudden. And so that's basically what has fundamentally changed him. And so I feel like you can only appreciate it if you really look at Edward and Stephanie Meyer's vampires from that perspective. That's my reasoning. That's why it does not bother me at all, because I'm among the people who hate insta-love, but I'm letting it slide because of that whole justification. I think that's all that I have to say about this. Oh, I did forget something. The cover, the pomegranate. There was so much like hate over this cover, and I'm still not a big fan of it, okay? Like, I'm really not. And then we heard that there's a story behind it, and there is. I don't know, it's as much as part of the story as any of the other covers in the series. I think that this one actually has more significance than the other covers in the series. So, whatever. And it actually does match. Even if it's kind of awkward, it does match the other books, so that's at least a good thing. Also, I'm not really sure about the whole lore, but I thought it was very interesting. I actually did. Because however he describes like the whole pomegranate thing, it is kind of interesting. So let me know if you have read this book or if you're excited to read this book and your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Bye.